on, baby. I found 22 baby ducklings on my roof a couple of weeks ago. That's right, 22, not one, not two, not 10, not 15, 22 baby fluff balls of peeping, quacking joy on my roof a couple of weeks ago, and it was the most insane, exciting day of my life. Watching them fledge off my roof to the ground, to their mom, communicating with their mom, supporting them in this pivotal moment in their life. And it confirmed something that I've known in my heart for a while, but that I have stepped into a new evolution of my relationship with plants and nature. And today I want to tell you all about the ducklings and all about that evolution. Growing joy. Hello, plant friends. My name is Maria, and I am here to help you care for plants and grow joy in your life. And today we are talking about one of the most exciting and joyful days and experiences of my life. It happened a couple of weeks ago, and it's when I found 22 ducklings on my roof. So crazy, even just saying it out loud. This story was not just exciting for me, but it was really exciting for our community that follow me on social media. I shared about it. It went viral. I have never had more requests in my DMs for updates. You guys were giving me advice. You were so invested. And it really revealed something to me, both about our community and about myself. We love ducks. Obviously, ducks are adorable, and these ducklings are the cutest ducklings ever. There will be photos in the video podcast of this and in the show notes for those listening along. But also, it's confirmed something to me that I have known has been happening behind the scenes for a while that I haven't really explicitly talked about here online. And so I figured I'd use this duckling story and this podcast episode to kind of talk about it. But I have really deepened and stepped into another level of my relationship with plants and nature. And where growing joy is where I help you care for plants and grow joy by doing so. Caring for plants really means something different to me now. 8 years ago, when I was living in 500 square feet in New York City, I had houseplants. I had a tiny little balcony garden. That was what opened my eyes to the beauty of plant care and the beauty of houseplants. Houseplants were my gateway drug. Then I moved to the country, to 5 acres in the country, and that's where I went through the beginning of this change that I want to talk about today, which is becoming nature curious. Nature curious is this word that I've been talking about a lot privately with me and my husband and my family, but it's really how I identify as a nature curious person. Yes, I'm a plant lady. Yes, I'm a novice gardener, but really under all of that is I'm nature curious. I am curious and lit up about the world around me. 8 years ago, it was that I wanted to understand how photosynthesis worked and how to water plants and how plants uptake water and how to successfully care for succulents. Then it moved into, okay, how do I grow cut flowers? How do I do this? But in the last couple of years, I've noticed a shift in my relationship with plants that have shifted from wanting to really be in control and nurturing them in containers to still enjoying that as I record this podcast episode with an enormous green wall behind me. But there's a deeper curiosity here now that is under all of my love of plants and gardening that roots in the plants that are outdoors that I don't control, and the nature outdoors that I don't control. I find myself really drawn to trees. I find myself really curious about the grass on my front door. I find myself constantly listening to the bird song and taking breaks to go outside to listen to the birds on my street. I feel like I can kind of chat with them a little bit. There's been this awakening of a deeper reverence for nature and the larger scope of plants. I talk a lot about plants on this podcast, like house plants, garden plants, potted plants, but really plants are nature and all of the beings that come alongside the plants that we grow and love to tend to or love to be in the presence of, like the birds, like the butterflies, like the caterpillars, like the moles and voles that are pestering all of us in our gardens, like the river otters that are in the river in my backyard. But I've really just noticed this deepening awareness of plants on a much larger scale and this awareness and curiosity about nature. And so it's this nature curious lifestyle that I think I've been living. And if you're following me on social media, I'm not telling you anything new. You know that this is kind of where I've been going. And I'm not to say, obviously on this podcast, we're still always going to talk about houseplant care and gardening care and how-to guides. But I personally am in this place of real interest and curiosity about plants and nature on a larger scope, if that makes sense. And alongside that, I think this growing into the being the nature curious person that I am today is what initiated this duckling moment that kind of went so viral and captured so much interest. So before we go into the story, and I am going to tell you from the beginning to the end, including an update for those of you who have been following along on where the ducklings are now, I want to walk you through the whole story because it's so fascinating and it's so fun. And I think that more people could probably be having stories like this if we tap into this nature curious side of ourselves. When I was sharing about the ducklings and I was so overwhelmed with the response and so curious that, I just have hundreds and hundreds of comments on these posts that I've been making about the ducklings and their updates and suggestions. I'm like, what's underneath this? And it's this curiosity about how I'm developing this relationship and kind of comfortability around nature in a different way. And so I want to go back to when I wasn't nature curious. So I used to be plant blind, and I don't like the word plant blind, but it is the name for this kind of condition that's been written and published about. But plant blindness is this concept that I believe was published about in the 70s that talks about how humans prefer and value animals over plants. So if you're plant blind, you don't really notice the trees on your block. You don't really recognize that the grass, like your lawn, is a living thing. You don't notice the different colors of plants. Like you're plant blind, everything is in the blur. And then what I notice what happens is when a lot of people start caring for houseplants or gardening for the first time, all of a sudden it's like they have these blinders that have been taken off and they're noticing all the trees on their street. And, the nail salon they've been going to for 10 years has this epic Hoya in it that they've never noticed before. And all of a sudden they're like staring at it, with their jaw open. This is actually a story that happened to me, but it's this real like aha moment, heart opening awakening that you have. So that was probably like the first awakening of, whoa, I was not noticing plants and now I'm totally noticing plants. But I was noticing plants in this very sterile, controlled way with, potted house plants and trees on my block, like little things like that. But I wasn't interacting with the wild plants as much as I was interacting with plants that felt safe, like in containers. Then as we moved from New York City, 500 square feet to 5 acres. I love saying I moved from 500 square feet to 5 acres in the rural Catskills in the woods. I was kind of thrown into nature. I was thrown into the wild. When we moved to our house, there were bats everywhere at night. And I remember we had this beautiful balcony. And in the beginning of our experience in the Catskills, I was too scared to go on the balcony at night because I was so scared of the bats. I was scared the bats were going to dive bomb me and suck my blood. They were like going to be crazy. But this little kernel of nature curiosity entered my system, and I started watching some YouTube documentaries on bats and learning about them. And over the course of 2 years, I shifted from literally not being able to go out on my balcony because I was so scared of the bats to asking my husband to pour me a drink. We both go sit on the balcony at night and watch the bats fly around like it was TV. Like towards the end of our time in the Catskills, Billy and I were watching the bats at night with the sunset the way that we would watch a TV show. Like I fell in love with these bats. So over the last 5 years, as I've really shifted from my New York City fight or flight plant blind experience to someone who is nature curious, someone who is more in tune with nature. In my book, I talk about tuning your ears to the frequency of plants and to the frequency of nature. As I feel like I've learned to speak this language more fluently, in my nervous system, there's been a real softening about nature as I've become more curious, as I've become less scared and more curious. And, but there's also just been this comfort of being in the presence of nature that I didn't have as a kid and in my early 20s. I wasn't comfortable. I didn't want to be in nature. And now it's like all that I want. I've also noticed a few things that innately have just changed in me. So number one, I've become hyper aware of bird song and nature sounds. In my book, I talk about how sound pollution is like the silent killer for human nervous systems. I had no idea how my nervous system had been so deeply affected by the sound pollution in New York City until I moved to the Catskills, and then I was in the absence of all of that sound pollution. At first, it presented as anxiety because I was like so stressed to be in the silence, to be in the natural world, and then it came into this comfort. And then all of a sudden, I just feel like I am in tune with the sounds of nature in a way that I haven't been before. So as I walk through my house, I can hear the birds outside and I wasn't able to hear the birds outside before. And I do want to say that this is in large part thanks to Wind River Chimes. They're a sponsor of the podcast, and you will hear an ad from them today. But adding these wind chimes to my outdoor space has really added my ability to like pick up on the wind, like pick up on the sounds that are naturally occurring outside, because I would hear these wind chimes all day and it would have me pause as I listened to the wind chime to have a mindful moment. But then in the space of that mindful moment, I would also drop in and listen to the bird song or the wind or the bees, like whatever was buzzing outside my window as I was enjoying that wind chime. I also notice, and this is an indirect response to like healing plant blindness, I see plants so clearly now. I am in tune. My eyes feel in tune with nature in a different way. I notice plants. I notice butterflies. I notice caterpillars. I notice things. I walked by a window today and I noticed there were mushrooms outside on a tree stump that were not there the day before. Like, I just have this keen sense of awareness and connection to nature that I'm struggling to kind of put into words, plant friends, to be honest, but I feel like I have to kind of lay the groundwork for that when it comes to these ducklings, because when we begin to talk about the ducklings, the reason why I had this encounter with 22 ducklings was because I heard the mom calling to her ducks and I heard the ducklings responding. And 4 years ago, I would not have heard the call from the mom and I would not have heard the ducklings. I would have had a podcast going on. I would have been enraptured in whatever work I was doing. I just wouldn't have heard it. It would have been white noise. And this shift into being nature curious, into being tuned to this frequency of nature that I can't quite explain to you yet, even on this podcast, this shift has allowed me to have these unbelievable experiences interacting with nature or witnessing nature, because I can hear or see them in ways that I just wouldn't have heard it 5 years ago. Like, does that make sense? Please write me and let me know if I'm making sense to you or if I sound absolutely crazy. So the beginning story of the ducklings actually happens 8 months ago. I had just moved to my new house in Florida, and I was hanging my Wind River wind chimes, the Corinthian wind chime that I am so obsessed with. I was on a stepladder in my backyard hanging my wind chime over a beautiful tree that overlooks the water, and there was a mama duck and her baby ducks across the water. We have a little stream in our backyard. As I'm standing on the stepladder, hanging the wind chimes, Mama Duck flies over the water and kind of attacks me. Like, she kind of flies at me. And it really took me off guard. I was so scared. I jumped off the ladder. It's crazy. I have this all on camera because I was trying to film hanging the wind chimes for a video that I was going to make for Wind River Wind Chimes. And I ended up catching this whole interaction with this mom on the camera. But she attacked me and I jumped off and I ran inside really quickly into my lanai. So I felt protected in my lanai. And the mom ran up to the door and started looking at me. And she turned her head to the side and she looked at me through this. The birds have their eyes on the side of their head. So she looked at me through the side of her head. And I was like, I'm your friend, Mom. I'm not your enemy. And I have a baby parakeet, so I have bird food and bird seed. And so I was like, Mom, wait a minute. Let me go get some bird seed for you. And I went and got the bird seed. I brought it back and I fed her. And she ate the bird seed, not out of my hand. She ate the bird seed out of my backyard. I kind of gave her the bird seed and then closed the door to make sure that she still wasn't going to attack me. Once again, fear of nature. She looks at me again. She gives me this deep, knowing look, flies back over the water, and leads her babies across the water back to me, up off of the water into my backyard, and allows me to feed her babies. And in that moment, I don't know what happened, plant friends. Me and this mama locked in, and I was like, I've got you. I'm going to help you take care of your babies, mama. There were seven babies. That's a normal amount, not 22 yet. And then over the course of the next 4 months, Mama would come to visit every day or every other day. And I think this is a big part of my nature curiosity opening, because I noticed this awareness that I had of, I was kind of in the back of my mind always wondering when Mama was going to show up and when I could hear her or when I could hear the babies peeping, so that I knew to go to my back lanai to give them some food. I ordered special mealworms on Amazon. I was like I went down this Google trap. You're not supposed to feed ducks bread because they can't digest it and it fills their stomachs up and then they don't get the nutrition that they need. I ordered the mealworms. I have the mealworms. I'm building this gorgeous relationship. I watched these babies grow up in front of my eyes, from the little fluff balls that they were into full ducks. Muscovy geese actually is what they are. Now, what I realized is the ducklings in which I just interacted are the babies of one of those babies that I fed and helped raise over the last 8 months. So, anyway, over those for 4 months, Mama's bringing me her babies. Then Mama kind of peels off. The babies keep visiting me. They're not babies anymore, they're full grown ducks. And I've got this great little relationship with the ducks. It's really fun. Once again, similar to the bat scenario, I felt this softening in my heart and this opening in my heart. To building this comfortability. I don't know if comfortability is a word, but to building this relationship with the wild that I had never had, right? So I guess this is all about building the relationship with wild instead of the relationship with a controlled houseplant. And now the ducks are just part of my daily life. If you follow me on Instagram, you see my ducks all the time. They come visit me. They follow me around. We're best friends. I give them the nutrition that they need. My neighbors think I'm crazy. And that's that, right? So anyway, cut to 2 weeks ago. I'm sitting in my office on my computer doing work, probably creating a podcast episode or two for you guys. And I hear this like mama in distress. Like I hear crazy quacking. I don't know what noise does this duck make. And then out of like the corner of the back of my head, I hear peeps. And I was like, oh my God, there's new babies. The new mama has brought me her babies. I got to run outside and feed them. So I run outside to the lanai where I have my mealworms. I'm ready for the new flock. And I don't see any babies, but I see mama pacing up. This is a separate mama, not the same mama from last time. So there's a mama whose babies are right above my lanai. She seems to be freaking out. I can hear them and see them. Hi, babies. What do I do? This mama is actually one of the babies that grew up that now has had her own babies. I see her pacing furiously up and down the side of my house, and I hear the peeping of these ducklings, but I cannot see them. I am looking left. I am looking right. There are no ducklings to be found, but there is this deafening chorus of ducklings somewhere. And so I go outside and I ask mama, like, what's going on, babe? Like, where are your babies? And she looks at me and then she looks up at my roof. And I notice a tiny little beak hanging out over my rooftop. I notice, oh my gosh, all of her babies are on my roof. There is like this attachment where my roof and my lanai join, and there's this beautiful eave that is perfect to go lay eggs and raise babies in. However, it's 8 feet above the ground, and these babies now were on the corner of my roof trying to fledge and jump to get down to their mom. The mom is beside herself. She's running up and down. She's yelling at the babies. The way that the roof is positioned, the babies are struggling to get over the roof and down onto the ground. And to me in that moment, I was like, oh my God, these babies are going to break their necks if they jump. I get my stepladder, the same stepladder from the original mama attack 8 months ago. I go up to where the mom is. I'm asking her, Mom, do you want me to go try and help your babies? I get on the stepladder. I try and help the babies, but they're so scared of my hand that whenever I put my hand in to try and grab them to help them out, they run away. Then I'm standing there like a psychopath, plant friends, with like a box, like a cardboard box. I'm standing under the roof being like, babies, jump into my box, jump into the container. I will lift you down. I will transport you to your mom. They did not get the message. So I'm saying this to you guys. I'm just so curious to think like what your faces look like as you're listening to this story. The babies then run to the other side of my roof. The other side of my roof is kind of treacherous if they were to jump. There's like some jagged rocks and like uncomfy stuff. So I make a landing pad for them. Mom is still running back and forth, honking at me, honking at them, trying to get them to jump. They're too scared to jump. So I make a landing pad. I go get an outdoor pillow. I put the outdoor pillow. I put a bunch of blankets around it. So if they were to jump, at least they wouldn't like break their necks on this like big root that was sticking out, whatever. Lo and behold, in front of my eyes, I watch the first duckling fledge. I watch the first duckling jump off the roof, plummet to the floor, and join its mom. And because I guess this downy feathers, like the baby fuzzy feathers that make them so cute, they act as cushioning for these babies. So they're actually able to fledge just fine. The baby jumps off the roof, like kind of takes a tumble and just pops up and starts joining its mom. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, the poetry of this moment, like watching this baby just jump, like talk about a leap of faith. this baby just taking this huge leap of faith off of 8-foot roof. It's been alive for 2 days. It's listening to its mom, who's clearly saying, jump, jump, jump. And it jumps and it tumbles and it's okay. And in that moment, I also was evaluating a couple of different things that I'm interested in pursuing in my business. And I was like, whoa, this is a sign from Mother Nature that maybe I need to be comfortable with taking a leap of faith. If this 2-day-old baby duckling can take a leap of faith off of my 8-foot roof, tumble, get up, and walk it off like it was nothing, maybe I can take the leap of faith that I know I need to take in the future as well. Such a life lesson learned by witnessing this natural phenomenon that happens all the time, every spring. Over the course of the next couple of hours, I saw 8 babies fledge. There were 8 babies, this cute little pack chasing mom around. And then I had to go into meetings and I was unable to just like capture the whole thing throughout the day. It was a work day and we moved forward. So the next day I didn't see the rest of the babies fledge, but there's no more peeping on my roof. So the babies must have gotten out. The babies must have jumped and maybe even gone with a separate mama, because I don't think one mama would have 22 eggs. So I think there are multiple mamas that are up in the eaves of that roof, and maybe they fledged later that day and went with another mama. But the original mama, the next day I saw in the water, walking her babies around. I was able to feed them. She was so adorable. And over the next couple of days, I saw them with their mom being happy. I want to take a moment to thank all of the people that reached out to me on social media to say, make a slide for them, make a slide, attach a sheet to the top of the roof, and then push them off the side so they all slide down the slide, or get up there and push them all off. They're not going to know how. Like, I loved the investment of our community in the ducky tails, in the duckling tails, shall we say. But yeah, so the ducklings are free. There's no one in the eaves of my roof anymore. I did make my husband go up there and see if there were any more ducklings that we might have had to like get more creative about rescuing if they just like couldn't figure out how to fledge. And now I do see 8 babies with mama. It takes me back to the original mama and her babies, who I fed for 4 months, how she started with 7 babies and she ended up with 5. And I do think that's another like nature-based metaphor for loss and the natural way of things, the natural course life takes. There are a lot of predators in my backyard. There's river otters. There's all sorts of things that get these baby duckies that make me really sad. And I hope that all 8 of these ducklings with this mama hang around nearby so I can watch them grow up, and that they all make it. I have not seen mama in the last 4 days. We do have this long body of water in our backyard that travels very far. So I'm assuming she's gone for a few days, like taking them on a hike, taking them on a trip down the water. Hopefully she'll come back. She knows that, I've got food for her waiting. And one of my neighbors also is very invested with them. But man, plant friends, I have to say, like, this whole duckling experience has been greater than any Apple TV show I've ever watched. And believe me, I watched all the Apple TV shows. Shout out to Apple TV. But as I am stepping into this more nature curious state of being, as my relationship with plants and nature is deepening, I am just finding slowing down and witnessing nature, witnessing the natural way of things, witnessing the miracles that are literally happening on our front doorstep and in our backyards every day. It is the greatest show on earth, and it is the biggest lesson in hope. It feels like the world is falling apart these days. And yet, these ducklings are fledging. They know exactly what to do. 2 days old, jumping out of their nest, going to their mom. I'm in the process of supporting some monarch caterpillars that were in the milkweed in my front yard, and they're all in chrysalises right now. And there's something so poetic about these caterpillars show up out of their egg with everything in them already to become a butterfly, but what they have to sacrifice in order to become this butterfly is just so tremendous. It is magic. It is unbelievable. And I get a front row seat as I watch these chrysalises open, but like these miracles, they're not miracles though, plant friends. They're like every day. Nature is every day. Nature isn't magic. Nature isn't miracles. Nature is nature. Ducklings have been hatching for generations, for millennia. Caterpillars have been going into chrysalises and coming out of cocoons as butterflies forever, for so long, for so much longer than we've been around. And yet We're so disconnected from these incredible things that are happening right in front of our eyes, particularly if you have a yard. And all you need is a yard. All you need is a tree on your street if you're living in an urban environment. All you need is a local park that you can go to on a daily basis or every couple of days. There is this unbelievable, life-giving source of awe and joy and hope that is right in front of our eyes that I feel like so many people are missing. And in my waking up to it, I feel a deep responsibility to share with you guys in hopes that you can have this duckling experience too. Because when I tell you one of the coolest moments of my life was watching that first duckling fledge and jump to its mom. These are things that we feel like we can only watch on a David Attenborough TV show. And yet they're accessible to us. How many people have baby nests, bird nests in their front yard or in their backyard that they could be taking more note of? How easy would it be for you to go out every day and try and listen to birdsong for a few minutes a day just to start tuning your ears to that frequency? How easy would it be just to make sure that you plant a few pollinator plants in your front yard so that you can attract the pollinators that you need, so that you can marvel in butterflies and hummingbirds? Or maybe it's as simple as, for me, the OG moment of awe, having a houseplant that grows a new leaf and watching that new leaf unfurl. These things that I'm describing, they're so simple, but they're so powerful, particularly when we are just in this moment of overstimulation, anxiety, stress, overwhelm, despair, transition. Like, it is a tough time to be alive in 2025. And what I am finding is the greatest source of wellness and happiness and joy for me is in watching my ducklings and watching my monarchs. So I don't know, plant friends, I'm so curious to hear what you think about this episode, if this resonates with you, if you're nature curious, if you feel curious about cultivating and becoming more nature curious. I hope you followed along the duckling journey on social media. I'll be providing updates there as well. If you don't already follow me, you're welcome to follow me at Growing Joy with Maria on Instagram and TikTok, particularly in my stories. I'm trying to share in my stories more on a real time, no makeup, no editing basis of like, what are the things that I'm doing every day in my nature curious exploration of life. I love you so much, plant friends. I hope you liked my story. I will, in the show notes for this episode, put some pictures of my ducklings, my 22 ducklings. They're so cute. I hope they bring you so much joy, and I hope they inspire you to fledge, take your leap of faith, and also maybe open your eyes to something that you've been a little blind to in the past. All right, plant friends, until next time, keep growing joy.